Hi.
Hi, and welcome to Kapow, where we look at comics, cartoons, collectibles, and just everything that's pretty awesome, really.
Yeah.
I'm Sonya.
And I'm Al, and it is an exciting day here at Kings Comics.
Yes, you do seem rather excited
Well, that's
today.
because I am. Apart from the fact that we're looking at some awesome comics like Harvest and Stuff of Legend, and Ray's going to be in to talk about Claymore. Besides all that, we have a very special guest.
See, now I understand why you're so excited.
Right?
Okay. Yes, we have Nicola Scott joining us here on Kapow, which is pretty awesome.
Yes, it
Renowned
is.
artist for things as Birds of Prey, which is one of my personal favorites.
Absolutely.
Secret Six, and of course Teen Titans.
I'm a little worried I may geek out completely.
Hold it in.
I'm
You'll
trying,
be fine.
I'm trying.
First of all, we have to look at Absalom, Ghosts of London.
Ah, yes.
Now, we've looked at a lot of crime noir comics thanks to Al's insistence,
You're
mainly.
welcome.
But weirdly enough, we've never looked at anything from 2000 AD.
It is weird, isn't it? I mean,
Strange.
because when we're interviewing people, or even when we're just randomly asking people in the street,
Harassing.
because we're weird and we do that, people will always say 2000 AD in their list of favourites.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got Rogue Trooper, ABC Warriors, even,
Of course.
come on,
Yeah.
Judge Dredd.
Of course.
They're always there in some form in the
Yeah,
list. So,
true.
in true Kapowian fashion, we've decided to look at it as well, but something a bit different.
Yeah.
We're looking at one of the new titles that they've brought out called Absalom, Ghosts of London.
Now, I think one thing that you should do before you actually read Absalom is watch a few episodes of The Sweeney. Or at least The Bill, you know?
Or anything that's got Ray Winstone in it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because this thing is jam-packed with verbal gems like, "Ugh, all right, you're going to get that Stitch, sunshine," or I don't know, "Who else wants to play silly buggers?" You know, and you really need to tune your ear into that.
Yes, now I like that you say tune your ear because it's true and it's a testament to Gordon Rennie's writing, really, that by the end of this I could hear all their voices in my head. That makes me sound like a crazy person,
little
but
bit, yeah.
I could. But the artwork in this is equally transcendental. Like, it's amazing. I could smell the back streets of London in this, but not as much as I could smell the main character, Harry Absalom.
Yeah, he's spectacular, isn't he?
Yes.
I mean, I know what you're saying about the smell. I was getting old tobacco, I was getting sour alcohol, I was getting the sort of not having bathed for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
This guy is quintessential old school copper.
Ah, yes, but very old school copper, because Harry Absalom and his team enforce the Accord,
Yes.
which is a really old agreement between the throne of England and the creatures of hell.
Yeah, it's a nasty job,
Yeah.
but somebody's got to do it. And not that Harry really has that much of a choice, because he has terminal cancer, and he only actually stays alive as long as he remains useful to his bosses.
Does, but he seems to throw himself quite gleefully into the fray, between swigs from his ever-present hip flask that's laudanum-laced whiskey.
Yeah, purely medicinal.
Purely medicinal.
As he continues to say. Now, I think this comic really does ride on Harry's personality
Yeah.
a lot, but that's not to say that there's not a lot else going on in there. It's really well-written stuff. I mean, Ghosts of London features 3 self-contained but sequential stories. They're tight, they're pacey, and they have a, again, gleeful amount of ball kicking.
Seriously, there is so much of it in this comic. You're just kind of flicking through going, and he does it again, and again, and again. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
You meet a new bad guy, it's like, come on, do it,
Any
do
minute
it,
now.
do it, do it. There's just so much fun to be had in this, in the violence and in the dialogue that's used, but the way Tiernan Trevelyan has drawn these characters and drawn the action is just fantastic.
It is.
I really, really enjoyed it. And
You get a sense from that really British brawling.
yes, good old-fashioned British brawling, but with demons. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. Look, if I had to pull out one criticism,
Yeah.
because, review show, balanced opinions,
We kind of
whatever.
have to, yeah.
It would be is that it's not in colour. It's just 2000 AD. They do a lot of stuff in black and white. And I just feel like there's that sequence where the great fires of London gets pulled from the past into the present. And I just feel it would have been perfect if it was in colour. The art is still fantastic though,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I do know what you mean, but seriously, like you said, it is a 2000 AD title, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the format.
And it's only a tiny, tiny criticism. Like, it's nothing. It's nothing. I loved this comic.
Yeah, look, I did as well.
Yeah.
I have no hesitation in giving this one a buy.
Yeah.
This is so much fun. It makes me want to go back and read those old 2000 AD titles that I loved so much growing up.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to keep reading.
You're going
this
to keep
one.
reading? Yeah, Absalom is definitely one to keep an eye out for. I can't wait to get pulled down the streets of London again in the next book and just find out more about these mysteries that just get dropped in and then nothing else is said. Like, wait, what?
Wait,
what does that
what are they
mean?
talking? Yeah.
It's so good. It's a buy from me as well. Go get this comic or we'll be round your manor.
Oh, right, we go get the drinks in.
Yeah, sorted.
Bosh. Okay, it is a massive big day on Kapow today. We have Nicola Scott with us. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Nicola.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's a real pleasure.
Thanks.
Now, look, we want to get into, just start with a bit of background, how you got into comics in the first place, really.
Getting into, I was kind of getting into the characters as a kid, but it wasn't really through comic books. It was through TV shows and the films. You know, I didn't really have access to comic books. When I was a kid, I'd just come from a big girl family, and there weren't any geeks amongst us except for myself.
Right.
But when I decided to get into the industry, it kind of came about because the careers that I had been pursuing weren't really paying off in the way that I wanted, and it had come down to knowing that I needed to do something creative, knowing that I could draw, and wondering if I had to draw the same thing all day, every day, what would I be happy drawing? And I thought, God, it'd be nice if I could just draw Wonder Woman every day. And as soon as that occurred to me, I was like, oh my God, that's a job.
Yeah,
that's
why not
an
do that
actual
then?
job that somebody has. I want that job.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you've been in the industry for a while now. I mean, have you found, as you're developing your style, have you found it's best to develop your own specific style or be more flexible since you have to work on so many different titles?
Oh, look, a little bit of both. The comic book industry, the way it's kind of been developing for a good long time now, is very much on the identity of the creators as well as the identity of the central characters. And so having a style that is identifiable with you is great, but you still need to be able to work within a certain flexibility. When I first started off, I would say my style was a little more similar to someone like Terry Dodson.
Okay.
And when he got the gig on Wonder Woman before I started working at DC Comics, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to shift somewhere. And where I felt like would be a better place for me was just to sort of maybe butch up my art a little bit, make it a little bit more masculine, not quite so pretty, just to kind of counteract the fact that I'm a girl. I think a guy can get away with having pretty art, but a girl can't necessarily get away with having pretty art unless you're Amanda Connor.
It's an interesting point. I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned over this time that, for budding artists, people who are wanting to get into this industry, any pitfalls, any things to aim for?
Oh gosh,
It's a broad one, sorry.
Yeah. Look, I think the thing that a lot of people who are wanting to get into the industry, it's one of those industries that everyone that's a fan of, everyone who's a big comic book reader, they all want to work in the industry. They all hope for that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's incredibly underestimated is how much work it is.
Sure.
Not just getting in, but once you've got a job, it's an extraordinary amount of work.
Yeah.
You know, I'm rarely out from behind my desk. You know, I come out to do conventions, and you know, I try very hard to make time for my friends and family. But I'm working on a monthly book, and for the period of time that I've been at DC Comics, which is 6 years, I've had very little in the way of a social life.
Right.
But that's just because that's the nature of the job. And so I think that's one of the primary things that people underestimate. But it's also finding your voice, finding a way to differentiate yourself from your peers, and continuing to build your way towards your goal. I think a lot of people that want to work in the industry, they'll find along the way, they find their plateau, they find where they're comfortable, they'll find where they're happy, or they'll find themselves where they're not happy and they'll move into a slightly different direction.
Sure.
They'll find themselves working at a big company and they'll just like, no, I want to work in creator-owned, or vice versa.
Sure.
I think that is an important thing to be aware of as your career progresses, is staying aware of what the next goal is and moving towards it.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned the conventions, you're having to spend a lot of time going out to those. So there's been a lot of more movement, I think, in that lately, as well as a lot of cross-referencing into movies and games, and there's been a big focus on comic culture. Why do you think that has been so much lately, as somebody in the industry?
Geek culture is mainstream.
Yeah.
I think with the evolution of the action film becoming a superhero film,
Sure.
Franchises taking over speculative first films that might get a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much money to be made from geek properties, geek-related properties, and I think that in itself is driving the industry in a much more sort of dynamic way. There's way more merchandise than there ever used to be.
True, yeah.
There's way more sort of out of the direct market merchandise than there ever used to be. I think that there is this access and interest in general culture, pop culture, that just wasn't necessarily there, and now it's being fed really well. When we get a superhero movie now, it tends to be one of the best rather than one of the crappiest, which it might have been in the 90s.
Yeah, things like Daredevil and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, yay, we're getting one, bummer, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
But now they're the biggest box office earners.
It's true.
And I think that's
the
changing.
The money's going in that direction.
Yeah,
so,
I think if that's where the money's going, then the industry is growing, and we have sort of, shows like Big Bang Theory, which most nerds that I know hate the show.
Yeah.
But it is mainstreaming geek culture in a way that we might not necessarily feel represented in the show, but it's making it all very much part of the lexicon, which it's never been before.
Yeah, so I suppose there's good things and bad things about that, really, out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, another thing that's been quite big and is becoming bigger is digital comics.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've recently had one out with Tom Taylor in the Legends of the Dark Knight.
That's right.
Do you think that sort of format, digital specific comics, are the future of comics, or is it just another way of getting the story out?
I think for the moment it's just another way of getting the story out. The nature of comic books themselves, the market for them, the audience is still very much the tactile audience. They want the ownership. They're the people who are collectors. They're not necessarily collecting whole trades runs of Spider-Man back to the 60s, but they do want the paper product in their hands.
Something they can hold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think as the younger generation comes through, the kids who, now, so far removed from paper, because technology is providing everything that they need, digital might be more significant in a decade or two.
Yeah.
But I think even once it sort of grows, and I think it will grow, I think there's always going to be a market for the printed material.
Yeah.
Even if it's just things come out digitally monthly, but they get traded in book.
Yeah.
Because people want that on the shelves.
Yeah.
It's not the same as having it in a it's not the same as having it in a library in your USB port.
Being able to display it on your shelf.
Yeah, you want to be able to look at it.
There's a happiness to that, I find. Yeah.
It's a completely different experience.
It is. All right, well, look, it's been fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you for
you
letting me waffle on.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. And once again, just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care.
Do you ever feel like you take your organs for granted?
It's not really something I've thought about, honestly.
Wow. A.J. Lieberman's new miniseries, Harvest, is bound to make you value your heart, your liver, possibly even your colon just that little bit more.
That's a creepy thing to say.
I know.
But then Harvest does have a pretty creepy premise.
Yeah.
I mean, as the name would suggest, it revolves around people who work in the illegal harvesting and sale of black market human organs.
Exactly right. A woman named Greer and a guy called Craven kind of mastermind this business. But Harvest focuses on Benjamin Dane, who's a doctor who's pretty much screwed up his surgical career with what he refers to as a rather serious drinking problem and a semi-professional drug habit. there are no heroes in this story.
Which is always good,
Yeah.
I think. I always enjoy the complete lack of heroes. Yeah, in this case, I've seen Lieberman's work before in the unquestionably awesome Cowboy Ninja Viking.
Very cool.
One of my favourites.
Yeah.
So I came into this pretty excited, really.
Yeah, me too. Plus, it's a short story. Like,
Yeah.
I love that because we have so many ongoing series every fortnight, every month.
Yeah.
It gets a little draining sometimes on the old bank balance.
It does.
So it's nice to come up against a good story that has an end in sight.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've got to say, though, this one with the first issue didn't really hook me.
Really? Oh, I found the opposite. I mean, the artwork alone is excellent in this.
Okay, well, I won't argue with you on that one. I think Colin Lorimer's done a fantastic job on the art. I mean, especially the composition. The framing and the angles that he chooses are great.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Plus, the character models I found were really quite well presented. You could tell a lot about these particular personalities just by their posture or a facial tick or something. It was really masterful work.
Yeah. In terms of the story, though, I guess maybe I had my expectations too high, but I was expecting something a little bit more compelling from Lieberman.
Okay.
I mean, it's still good, but there wasn't that thing that just made me want to read the next one.
Yeah, right. See, I'm the opposite. I really enjoyed it. Like, the time shift at the start where you kind of start with Dane. Clearly, he's gone off the reservation from his... It's creepy, it's kind of weird, and then you go back 10 months to see how we've kind of ended up in that final place. You know how I like seeing how that
Sure,
happens.
especially when you know it's going
When
to go
you
bad.
know it's going to go badly. So I kind of liked that. I thought it was good.
Look, I know, and I'm by no means saying this was bad. I mean, certainly if this comic, if issue 2 showed up on a friend's coffee table, you know, a month from now, I would absolutely wait until her back was turned and then stick it in my bag. But what I'm saying is that there just wasn't enough to make me desperate to see the next one. I mean, there's a lot of great dialogue, what I would expect from Lieberman.
Absolutely.
And the art is great, but there wasn't that thing.
Yeah, okay, I do understand. Like, I do feel like this was maybe just an inch, 2 inches away from being really great story that kind of dragged me in and made me go, but why? What is going on? I don't understand. I have to read the next one. So for me, I feel being that it's only a 5-parter, I'm probably going to wait for the trade to come out for it to be collected and then buy it. I mean, it is a buy from me. I do love it. I think it's going to be really cool, but it's a wait for the trade buy.
Yeah, and look, once again, I will underline, there is nothing really wrong with this comic, but it just didn't grab me. It didn't make me desperate to see where it was going. So look, I'm still giving this one a borrow. I'm just going to have to wait until you buy the trade, and then I'll just nick it off your coffee table.
Yeah, so you've still got my copy of Marvel 1602, and until I get that back, you get nothing.
No, I don't. I don't have that.
It's on your bookshelf.
No, that's Marvel 1603.
The sequel,
Yep,
written by,
I wrote it myself in crayon.
I want it back. So Ray, women with big swords fighting demonic creatures.
Sounds awesome to me.
Me too.
Yes, well, it's a good thing then that we checked out Claymore this week. Now, Claymore's premise is simple, but very attractive, and so are the ladies.
Yes, because it's only women who can be claymores.
Yes,
So
that's right.
What is a claymore, Ray? Please tell us.
Well, they are female warriors who wear Roman army-like uniforms. The public refer to them as claymores, alluding to their claymore swords, or the silver-eyed witches, for obvious reasons. The series is set on a fictional medieval island where humans are plagued by Yoma, who are humanoid shapeshifters that feed on humans. A mysterious group, known as the Organization, create human Yoma hybrids called claymores to kill them. Now, Yoma and Claymore warriors alike are powered by a demonic energy, Yoki, which allows shapeshifting and extreme strength. And when warriors use too much Yoki, they awaken and become a super Yoma called an awakened being.
I really liked the world that they created in this, and the characters look really sharp, and the environment, some of the work that's been put into the backgrounds shows an amazing amount of scope.
Yeah, and design-wise, the claymores themselves, they look excellent, and the design of the costume and the armor, it's all quite elegant, and the swords and weaponry is all sleek and stylish. But the architecture as well, actually, I quite enjoyed, although that each town was a bit same. I thought that they lacked individual rhythms and different identities. So yeah, when they travel from town to town, it's like, oh, they just come from that place, or are they in the same one?
Bit generic.
Yeah,
there was a bit.
And
Ray, I can see it. Come on, spit it out.
well, before I slay Claymore, there's a little disclaimer, and that is that the English dubbed version is woeful, and that if you're going to catch it at all, you should see it in its original form, because the voiceovers are terrible, and the stoic nature of the script it's lost in translation.
It really is.
The original, at least you get to hear the wonderful authenticity and sound of the Japanese language at play, with all its inflections and some of the depth that I think is lacking in the English version. But again, story-wise, the exposition is terrible, and the dialogue which carries it, it's repetitive, monotonous,
it's a bit monotonous.
vacuous, perhaps. Yes, it took too long to get going. I watched 5 episodes and I still wasn't hooked, and I wasn't interested in any of the characters. The Yoma themselves, the demonic creatures, I thought that they were boring. So. Yeah.
It's such a shame though, because I kind of liked Claire. I thought she was kind of cool, and the relationship between her and Raki was,
yeah, I liked it too. I thought it was going to develop nicely, but it's not that it didn't go anywhere, it went too slow. Yeah, everything just felt very laborious. So, now, just a little background. The Claymore series, or Kuromoa, is based on a dark fantasy manga series written and illustrated by Norihiro Yagi, out of which Madhouse produced a 26-episode anime series. Directed by Hiroyuki Tanaka, the series adapts the first 11 volumes of its source material over the first 24 episodes, then uses an alternate ending for its final 2 eps. Now, my feeling here is that the manga is actually really good, and that something is lost, again, in the translation. I'd like to see what fans think of this, who have read the manga and seen the series, because there's a huge fan base out there, and I'd like to know what exactly was missing. Yeah, but look, onto the animation. The animation-wise, the palette itself is quite pretty. It's very detailed. There's lots of soft tones throughout the lighter moments, and then there's a lot of bold color choices and shadow when it's time for things to get serious. I thought the animation itself, though, was a little stilted. It didn't flow as well as I'd have liked.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I wasn't sure if they were trying to replicate stills from the manga or not. What I saw was great, but the characters were suspended in action too much, which gave me a kind of false importance of too many of the moments. Yeah,
the action also suffered from repeating an older technique, which it basically involves taking 1 or 2 different stills and then cutting them quickly together whilst sweeping across the frame. Now, this technique is reminiscent of a more traditional style of striking the action. Instead, you see, I wanted to see more of the character action within the frame. Now, I know a lot of anime do this. They basically blend the 2 techniques, and it's usually like a form of cost cutting as well. So perhaps the Claymore suffered from having a very small budget.
Maybe.
But look, I know I'm being picky here, but if I take something like Ninja Scroll, and I know I harken back to it, but it's a classic and it's excellent. It's an excellent example of blending the 2 styles. So that was 20 years ago. I think we've moved on since then, developed some greater techniques, or at least learned how to move the animation within the frame a lot better. So look, with the great range, the plethora of anime out there to choose from, there's some great series. I don't know if this is one to sink your teeth into. It's, even though it's got a huge fan base, I am mildly interested as to what exactly I'm missing out on. It sort of, gets at me, but look, I don't want to waste any more time on it, and I'm gonna have to burn it.
Oh, harsh, Ray, very harsh.
Yep.
I'm not gonna be quite
Just
so
call
harsh.
it, Sonya.
No. Like, the concept of it is really cool, and like you said, the color palette, I like the colors that they used. I like some of the character models. I thought that was really cool. The environment is really cool.
Yes.
I do feel like if I could just see it in Japanese, I'd like it more. It's that dubbing, that English dubbing is so appalling. It really grates at me, and I feel like I'd get more of the fluidity and more of the characters even if I could just read it rather than hear it in that awful, awful English dub.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find.
Yeah, and I agree. I feel like I'm missing out on something. There's such a huge base out there.
Yeah.
But what? Tell me what I'm missing out on. So it's something that I might go back to if I can find. If I can find the Japanese version, I might check it out again. But until then, I'm gonna bury it. I'm not gonna burn it. I'm gonna
Alright.
bury it.
Fair enough. Well,
Sorry.
just have to find our female
Yeah.
sword swinging
Demon
demonic
hunters.
creature killing ladies elsewhere.
There's not really a plethora of them out there.
No, it isn't. It's quite sad, really. But no tears here.
There's a very serious problem with Mike Raked and Brian Smith's graphic novel, Stuff of Legend.
Really?
And that problem is that there just aren't enough superlatives to explain just how awesome it is.
Okay, so it's nice to know you're going into this with a nice balanced view of
Yeah,
the book.
well, are you arguing with me? Can you think of even a single criticism of this book?
No?
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Stuff of Legend is so good. It makes your soul want to touch itself inappropriately. And I don't think I'm even overselling this.
Yeah, okay, so the most disturbing part of that is that you are right. I'm ignoring the rest of it. But let's talk a little bit about the plot, shall we?
Yes, we probably should.
Yes.
Okay, you lead in.
Alright, so Stuff of Legend is Toy Story meets Alice in Wonderland.
By way of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
And a touch of Saving Private Ryan thrown in there for good measure.
Yeah.
It follows a group of sentient toys who quest into another realm called the Dark after their beloved owner is captured by the boogeyman.
Yeah, but the fascinating thing is that once they venture into the dark, they change. A toy soldier becomes a real soldier. A teddy bear becomes a grizzly in a very natty necktie.
He's very well dressed.
A Jack-in-the-Box becomes a cool jester with twin hatchets.
He's so cool.
And he's awesome.
He is.
And this is where we get to one of the things that makes this so good. Now, for once, I'm going to be the first one to mention the art. The art in this is perfect.
Oh, it truly is.
Yeah.
Charles Paul Wilson III was possibly the only person who could illustrate this book. The use of sepia throughout is just brilliantly done. I mean, this is set in the Second World War, and it just underlines that danger and melancholia that just pervades this amazing piece of fiction.
And you do need to look at it like that, don't you? Just as an amazing piece of fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, Stuff of Legend was a New York Times bestseller, and you can really see why. The complexity of the characters really make you think, you know? It really, the angles that it has on it really makes you think about a few things.
Yeah.
I mean, it made me think of one of the things that I first considered when I first saw Toy Story, and that was, if all of our toys are sentient, then we're all monsters.
You're right, there are so many angles to all of these characters, and the little nuances in their personalities all reveal themselves in really interesting and quite intricate ways.
Yeah.
I mean, even the villains in this piece, their motivations, it's amazing.
And that's the thing, because every enemy in here, every member of the Boogeyman's army is a rejected, abandoned, or thrown away toy.
Yeah.
They all have reasons for their misanthropy, and it makes you actually wonder, does the boy deserve to be rescued?
Yeah, and that question I think is typified by Percy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so heartbreaking. And Percy is a piggy bank, so his entire fate is to be smashed when he's full.
And he's always known that.
And he's always known that, and it's those kind of angles and those kind of things that make you think in a different way. It's really quite masterful. It just makes you feel like you're reading a really special graphic novel.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They come along all too rarely. It's
They
something
do.
this good. I mean, look, it feels a bit redundant for us to actually tell you what we've rated this.
Yeah.
I think, you know, but obviously it's a buy. You know, this is a fantastic piece of fiction that is great for even kids. I think can get into it. Not too young,
not
but,
too young, because it is quite dark and it does get a little bit violent.
But I don't know. I think there's still some angles. I mean, when we were kids, this is the sort
is
of we
what
would
we
have loved
wanted
this
to
sort
read,
of stuff.
yeah,
So look,
absolutely.
this is no holds barred. This is a solid gold buy.
Yeah, see, I feel the same way. Like, you know how you feel about The Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah.
It's kind of how I feel about Stuff of Legend. This is just almost as close to a perfect graphic novel as you can get in my mind.
Right.
It's just, I can read this over and over again. It is absolutely superb. So yeah, take that buy, copy and paste it 1,000 times, and you've got my opinion. It's a buy. A buy.
They get it. It's okay.
It's a buy.
Yeah, just go read it again.
Okay.
Calm down.
Okay.
I'll get her a cup of tea.
We have come to the end of another big episode of Kapow.
Yes, we have, and we only have one more episode for this season.
No, I don't want to think about
Well,
it.
we have to think about it, because next week, the final episode of Season 2, we're going to be looking at some of the awesome things that we've come across
That's true.
that people really should be reading or watching.
We're gonna give any clues, give any titles.
No.
No.
Why spoil the surprise?
That's a very good point.
Yes, it is.
Plus, we will be announcing the winner of our Walking Dead competition.
will.
So get your entries in. I mean, come on, guys. The zombie apocalypse could happen at any time, and we need your strategies.
I'm going to trip you. Seriously, guys, it could be a matter of life or death. So please do get your top 3 survival tips in,
Yes.
and we will see you next week.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye guys.